The colony of New Helios had always been a fragile beacon of human endeavor, perched on the edge of a distant star system. For years, it had thrived under the steady flow of information and guidance from Earth, a constant hum of connection threading across the void. But now, as the twin suns dipped below the jagged horizon, that hum had vanished entirely. The observatory's monitors blinked blank, the usual stream of data replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to seep into every corner of the settlement. Dr. Elara Voss sat alone in the dimly lit observatory, her sharp eyes fixed on the dark sky beyond the reinforced glass. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands escaping to frame her pale face. The cold hum of the instruments was a stark contrast to the silence that had fallen over the colony. For hours, she had watched the screens, waiting for any sign, any whisper from Earth. But there was nothing, just the vast, empty void. Her mind raced, torn between disbelief and mounting dread. The communication blackout was total. No signals, no transmissions, no data packets. The lifeline that connected New Helios to its origins had been severed without warning or explanation. The implications were staggering. Outside, the colony stirred. News of the silence spread quickly, igniting a firestorm of fear and speculation. In the central square, under the harsh glare of artificial lighting, settlers gathered in anxious clusters. Voices rose in heated debate, accusations swirling as the reality of their isolation settled in. Resources, once managed with careful balance, now seemed precarious. Trust fractured as factions began to crystallize, each group staking claims, asserting authority in the absence of clear leadership. Councillor Thane Rykov emerged swiftly as a figure of authority. Tall and imposing, his sharp features and cold gaze lent him an air of unyielding command. With the colony on edge, Rykov seized the moment to consolidate power, advocating for strict control and order to navigate the crisis. His words were measured but firm, appealing to a growing sentiment that only decisive leadership could prevent collapse. Yet not all were persuaded. Mira Solon, leader of a faction favoring cooperation and collective survival, countered with calls for unity and dialogue. Her short, athletic frame belied a fierce determination, her bright eyes scanning the crowd as she sought to calm fears and bridge widening divides. Amid the turmoil, Elara remained apart, observing, analyzing, searching. The weight of isolation pressed heavily on her, compounded by the absence of her younger sister, Naomi. Their relationship was strained, a quiet tension simmering beneath the surface as the colony's unraveling mirrored their growing emotional distance. On the observatory's rooftop, Elara stepped into the cool night air, the alien constellations glittering coldly overhead. She breathed deeply, the silence around her both oppressive and strangely intimate. The stars, distant and unchanged, seemed to mock the chaos below. Yet within that silence, Elara sensed something else, a pattern, a message hidden beneath the cosmic noise. Her fingers traced the worn edges of her datapad as she resolved to dig deeper, to find meaning where others saw only emptiness. The colony's fate hung in the balance. As whispers of fear and rebellion grew louder, Elara's quiet determination burned brighter. Somewhere in the silence, a signal waited to be found, and with it, perhaps, the key to survival. But the path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger both external and within. The loss of Earth's voice was more than a technological failure. It was a fracture in the very soul of New Helios. How the colony would respond, whether it would unite or fall apart, rested on fragile shoulders. Elara's gaze lifted to the stars once more. The night was endless, but so was hope. Somewhere beyond the silence, A new story was waiting to be written. The colony's silence was no longer just an absence of messages. It had become a heavy weight pressing on every mind, every corner of their isolated world. As the second day without contact stretched on, the settlers of New Vesta found themselves caught between fear and speculation, their unease rippling through the communal spaces like a restless storm. Inside the observatory, Dr. Elara Voss sat hunched before the bank of monitors, her fingers steady despite the turmoil outside. The hum of the equipment was a familiar comfort, a constant in an existence suddenly unmoored. Her sharp eyes traced the patterns on the screens, searching for meaning in the cosmic static that had replaced the once familiar signals from Earth. Elara's thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of a data alert. She leaned forward, narrowing her gaze. The readings were unlike anything she had anticipated. Amid the expected noise, subtle anomalies flickered a series of irregular pulses woven into the cosmic background, whispering of something buried deep within the silence. It was as if the stars themselves had been speaking in a code she was only beginning to decipher. But outside the observatory's glass walls, the colony was fracturing. The initial shock of lost contact had given way to suspicion and unrest. The settlement's leadership was under scrutiny, their inability to restore communication breeding doubt. In the council chamber, voices rose over one another, a cacophony of fear and accusation. Councillor Thane Rykov stood at the center, his tall frame imposing beneath the harsh lights. His cold, calculating gaze scanned the room as he spoke with a voice that brooked no opposition. "We must take control," he declared. "Without order, this colony will descend into chaos. We cannot afford to wait for Earth's return. We must secure our resources, enforce discipline, and prepare for a new reality." His words found eager ears among those desperate for stability. Factions began to coalesce and rallying behind Rykov's call for strict governance, others wary of his authoritarian bent. The colony's social fabric, already strained by isolation, began to tear. Elara felt the weight of the growing divide as she moved through the corridors, the sterile walls echoing with whispered doubts and guarded conversations. She sensed the fractures in trust, the seeds of conflict taking root. Yet her mind remained tethered to the anomalies on her screens, a beacon of curiosity amidst the gloom. Her solitude was interrupted by a soft knock. Dr. Linway entered, her expression lined with concern. "Elara, have you seen the latest council announcement?" Rykov's tightening his grip. Elara nodded, her voice low but resolute. "We can't let fear dictate our future. There's something in the data, something more than just silence. We need to understand it before we lose ourselves to panic." Lynn's eyes met hers, reflecting both doubt and hope. "I'll help, but we have to be careful. If Rykov catches wind of this, he'll see it as a threat." Together, they returned to the monitors, the quiet hum of the observatory their sanctuary against the rising storm. Outside, the colony's fractures deepened, but within these walls, Elara's determination burned brighter than ever. The night deepened, and with it, the mysteries of the cosmic silence grew more profound. Somewhere in the vast darkness, a signal awaited discovery, a fragile thread that might yet bind the colony to its origins or unravel everything they had come to know. As dawn approached, Elara's fingers danced over the controls, chasing the elusive patterns that might hold the key to survival. The stars were silent no longer. They were speaking in riddles, and she was listening. But the question lingered in the cold air. Would the colony survive the fractures within before the answers could save them? And so the silence deepened, fractured by fear and lit by the faintest flicker of hope. The hum of the colony's common area was punctuated by low murmurs and the restless shifting of feet. Settlers gathered in small groups, faces etched with worry and suspicion, voices hushed but charged with the tension of dwindling resources. The air felt thick, as if the very atmosphere was bearing the weight of fractured trust. Mira Solon, her short frame poised with resolute calm, moved purposefully through the crowd, her bright eyes scanning the faces of those who looked to her for stability. She had taken upon herself the role of mediator, a beacon of pragmatism amidst the storm of factional disputes threatening to rend the colony apart. In a makeshift community hall, Myra stood between two faction leaders, their arguments sharp and unyielding like jagged stones scraping against one another. "We cannot let fear dictate our actions," Myra implored, her voice steady but carrying an urgency that cut through the growing noise. "Our survival depends on cooperation, not division. We share this ground, these dwindling supplies. There is no victory in tearing each other down." The room simmered with tension, but her words planted a fragile seed of hope. Slowly, voices lowered, and nods replaced sneers as the leaders exchanged reluctant glances. It was a small victory, but in this fractured world, even small victories carried weight. Far from the crowded hall, within the sterile quiet of the observatory, Dr. Elara Voss sat hunched over a bank of glowing monitors. The soft pulse of data streams filled the room with a low electronic heartbeat. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, eyes sharp and focused as she traced patterns across star maps projected in 3 dimensions. She was not alone this time. Beside her stood Dr. Linway, the colony's communications specialist. Lin's methodical presence complemented Elara's intensity, his glasses catching the dim light as he adjusted parameters and sifted through layers of cosmic noise. "Look here," Elara said softly, pointing to a sequence buried deep within the static. "These aren't random fluctuations. They're structure, patterns repeating at intervals that don't match known cosmic background radiation." Lin leaned closer, fingers dancing over the controls. "If this is a transmission, it's well hidden. The colony's signal filters never picked it up before." "Exactly," Elara replied, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. "It's like a whisper beneath the silence. Maybe a message, something Earth left behind, or a clue to what caused the blackout." Lin nodded thoughtfully. "We'll need to dig deeper, but if you're right, this could change everything." Back in the communal spaces, the colony was a powder keg. Rumors spread like wildfire, whispers of betrayal, of hoarding, of alliances forged and broken under pressure. The scarcity of food and clean water twisted the social fabric, stretching it thin until it threatened to snap. Elara's solitary nature had often kept her at the edges of these disputes, but the urgency of her findings pulled her closer to the colony's heart. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the colony's domed structures, Elara found herself on the observation deck. The glass dome above her framed the stars in a vast, ink-black expanse. Her breath fogged the cool surface as she pressed her palm against it, eyes searching for answers in the silent constellations. The void beyond was profound and impenetrable, a mute witness to the colony's unraveling. Yet within that emptiness, Elara sensed a pulse, a hidden rhythm waiting to be uncovered. Despite the fractures within her community, despite the growing divides, she clung to a stubborn belief that understanding this silence could offer a path forward. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft footsteps of Linway approaching. "You won't find answers out here alone," he said gently, joining her at the glass. "Maybe not," Elara replied, "but sometimes you have to look through the silence to hear what's really there." The night stretched on, a fragile calm settling over the colony like a thin veil. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new disputes, new fears. But in the quiet between, the first lines in the sand had been drawn. A tentative alliance between science and hope, a fragile thread of cooperation amid the chaos. And beneath it all, the hidden signal pulsed, waiting to be deciphered. The central hall of the colony was packed, the air thick with unease, as Councillor Thane Rykov stepped onto the raised platform. His tall, imposing figure cast a long shadow against the metallic walls illuminated by harsh fluorescent lighting, accentuating the sharp angles of his face and the cold, calculating gaze that had become infamous among the colony's inhabitants. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, a mixture of fear and reluctant acceptance as the councillor began to speak. Citizens of New Dawn, Rykov's voice cut through the tense silence like a blade. We stand on the edge of chaos. The loss of communication with Earth has plunged us into uncertainty, but we must not let disorder consume us. Effective control is not tyranny, it is survival. His words were deliberate and chilling, a call to arms disguised as a plea for order. He outlined new measures: strict rationing of food and water, intensified surveillance of faction activities, and the dissolution of unauthorized gatherings. His supporters nodded approvingly, their faces grim but resolute. Yet, in the eyes of many others, these decrees were the tightening grip of authoritarianism, a shadow stretching over the fragile hope of cooperation. Across the colony, in a less conspicuous part of New Dawn, Dr. Elara Voss sat hunched over a clotted workbench scattered with data pads and astronomical charts. The low hum of analytical equipment filled the cramped room, punctuated by the occasional beep of incoming data streams. Her sharp eyes, framed by dark hair pulled back into a practical knot, scanned the latest waveforms she had captured from the cosmic background. The anomalies she had noticed earlier persisted patterns buried deep within the static, faint but unmistakable. Ilaris's thoughts were interrupted by a cautious knock at the door. She glanced up as it creaked open to reveal a rugged figure with a weather-beaten face and quick hands. Joxrin, a smuggler by trade. Jox was known in the colony's underbelly for his resourcefulness and knowledge of the black market's secret communication channels. "Dr. Voss," he said quietly, stepping inside and closing the door behind him, "I hear you're chasing ghosts in the noise. Maybe I can help." The air between them was thick with suspicion and unspoken questions. Elara studied Jox carefully. His guarded demeanor hinted at a lifetime of survival in the shadows. Yet, beneath his cynicism was a flicker of hope, perhaps a shared desire to find answers in the silence. Their conversation was terse, but charged with potential. Jox revealed fragments of information about clandestine networks and coded transmissions circulating among underground factions. If Elara could decode these, it might unlock the mystery behind the cosmic blackout and the colony's isolation. Meanwhile, the colony's atmosphere darkened. Factions loyal to Rykov's strict hierarchy tightened their grip, enforcing curfews and punishing dissent. The streets echoed with whispered fears and the distant sounds of protests. Elara found herself increasingly isolated, her advocacy for pursuing the mysterious signal met with skepticism and hostility. One evening, seeking respite, Elara retreated to the observation deck. The cold metal floor contrasted starkly with the vast heavens stretching beyond the reinforced glass. Her breath fogged the pain as she traced constellations with her eyes, searching for a sign that the silence from Earth was not the end. The distant rumble of unrest beneath the colony was a stark reminder of the stakes. Yet Elara's determination only deepened. She knew that the truth lay hidden in the stars, waiting to be uncovered. In the security office, Captain Soren Hale monitored the colony's deteriorating order. His skeptical gaze flicked between surveillance feeds showing faction skirmishes and a message from Elara concerning the enigmatic signal. Despite his doubts, a seed of intrigue took root. Perhaps Elara's pursuit held more promise than the official narrative allowed. As shadows lengthened across the colony, the lines between order and chaos blurred. Councillor Rykov's iron fist tightened, but beneath it, new alliances began to form, fragile yet vital. Elara's meeting with Jox marked a turning point, opening a door into the colony's hidden networks and renewed hope. The chapter closed on a colony teetering on the brink, its people caught between fear and the faint pulse of discovery. The silence of the stars was no longer just a void, was a challenge to be met. What lay beyond the cosmic blackout remained unknown, but Elara was ready to face whatever shadows awaited. The cold hum of the signal lab was the only sound in the dimly lit chamber, punctuated only by the rhythmic blinking of indicator lights and the steady tapping of Elara Voss's fingers on the console. Outside, the twin suns of the colony had long since dipped below the horizon, their absence replaced by the strange, unfamiliar constellations of this alien sky. Elara sat hunched, eyes sharp and unblinking, as she and Dr. Linway sifted through layers of cosmic static in search of a pattern, a whisper amid the deafening silence. For weeks, the colony had been enveloped in a silence so absolute that it gnawed at the nerves of every inhabitant. The sudden and total loss of contact with Earth had left the settlers adrift, their lifeline severed without explanation. In the sterile glow of the observatory, Elara refused to surrender to despair. Her mind, a lattice of astrophysical knowledge and stubborn will, clung to the belief that the silence hid a secret, a message waiting to be uncovered. Elara, Linway murmured, leaning in closer to the spectral display, "Look at this pattern. It's subtle, but it repeats, almost like a code buried deep in the noise." Elara's breath caught. The screen showed a series of pulses, faint but distinctly non-random, weaving a rhythm that defied natural cosmic background radiation. Her heart quickened, a surge of adrenaline and hope flooding her veins. Could it be, she whispered, voice barely audible, a transmission? Linway nodded, fingers already manipulating the data streams, isolating the pattern with growing precision. The coded pulses seemed to form a complex sequence, an encrypted language etched into the void. Hours slipped by unnoticed as the two scientists delved deeper, their focus unyielding. Outside the lab, the colony stirred with tension and fear. Faction leaders jostled for power, resources grew scarce, and the fragile threads of society threatened to unravel into chaos. But here, in this small refuge of light and sound, Elara found purpose. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the colony, the rift between Elara and her younger sister Naomi widened. Naomi's footsteps echoed down the narrow corridor as she approached the observatory, frustration etched across her face. When she finally confronted Elara, the air crackled with unspoken grievances. "You're disappearing," Naomi said, voice trembling with a blend of anger and hurt. "We're all falling apart out there, and you hide behind your stars. I don't know if you even care anymore." Elara's eyes, tired but resolute, met her sister's. "I care more than anyone," she replied softly. "But understanding this signal, this could be the key to saving us all." Naomi's gaze faltered, the rawness of her pain breaking through. "I'm scared, Elara. Scared we're losing everything, including each other." The tension lingered, a stark reminder of the personal cost exacted by the colony's crisis. Yet Elara could not turn away from the enigma before her. Back in the lab, Linway's voice cut through the silence. "I think I've found something, a fragment of the code that might be decipherable." Elara leaned forward, pulse pounding. The code unfolded slowly, revealing symbols and patterns that hinted at meaning beyond simple interference. It was a message, cryptic, fragmented, but undeniably deliberate. The breakthrough ignited a new spark of hope within Elara, yet, even as the data danced across the monitors, she felt the weight of isolation deepen. Her obsession drove her further from the colony's fractured heart, a lone figure chasing a whisper in the void. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the observatory dome with pale light, Elara pressed onward. The secret buried in the cosmic silence was beginning to reveal itself, and with it, a fragile promise that connection might yet endure. But as the colony teetered on the edge, the question remained: what message lay hidden in the quiet, and what price would they pay to uncover it? The stars, once distant and indifferent, now seemed to pulse with a subtle urgency and echo in the void waiting to be answered.